From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Library of Congress and to our talk today. My name is Robert Saladini from the Kluge Center. To introduce our speaker, we've asked Barbara Tenenbaum, sorry, Barbara, I'm having a memory loss here, who's a curator of the Kislak collection. So, Barbara?
Thank you, Bob. It's a real pleasure today to be able to introduce our speaker. I study a very nationalistic country, Mexico. I'm also the specialist in Mexican culture here at the library. And it's rare that you meet someone who's more nationalistic and more in love with his country than Mexicans. And then I met Hernan. And needless to say, you will find out for yourselves that I don't think there's anyone on the planet who loves Panama more than Hernan. If there is such a person, I can't wait to meet him or her. But at any rate, so today's speaker is Hernan Arauz, who is a Kislak Fellow at the Kluge Center. And he is a graduate of the American University School of International Service. And his real claim to fame, however, is that he is one of Latin America's best naturalist guides. And he has guided quite a few people through Panama and Darien. And so he has this interest in exploration that he got from his family because his father, Amado Arauz, and his mother, Dr. Reina Torres de Arauz, were also interested in this area of things. And as a naturalist guide, he has led 7 expeditions across the Isthmus of Darien, from the Caribbean Sea to the Pacific Ocean, including the first one transmitted over the internet, and over 350 tours to the Smithsonian's Barrio Colorado Natural Reserve. The author of Lonely Planet's Guide to Panama has named Hernan one of the 3 men with whom he would trust with his life. Known not only as an expert generalist guide, Hernan has among his guiding specialties bird watching, family programs, customized expeditions into Darien, the history of the Panama Canal, which if any of you have ever been through it, you know is quite something to see, and the cultural history of Panama's UNESCO World Heritage Sites. He has been guiding tours for 20 years. And frankly, after having lunch with Hernan and Rebecca, I said to myself, I'm going to sign up for one of those tours. I mean, all right, so the rest of the tour will have to wait while I slowly but surely get there. But I am convinced that I am going to go to Panama with Hernan. So, here at the Library of Congress, we're very fortunate because Hernan has been putting his passion and knowledge of Panama and the Isthmus of Darien into the exploration of its cartographic history. So today he is going to regale us with his research project, the early cartography of Panama and Darien, creating a descriptive and interpretive carto-bibliography of a world's crossroads. Now, we are recording this, so when we come to the question period, please make sure that you identify yourself for purposes of the recording. So without further ado, Hernan Arauz.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tenenbaum. First, I would like to give you a little present from the Darien jungle. Well, thank you very much to all of you for being here in this exotic day for us tropical beings. It is a privilege for me to be here today. And I would like to first thank Mr. J. Kislak and the Kislak Foundation for their support of my fellowship. I would also like to express my very special gratitude to the staff of the John W. Kluge Center for their support, their help, to all my friends at the Geography and Map Division. It's been a wonderful, very productive time for me. The same for the Rare Books Division. With the exception of the time when my father, the great Darien explorer Amado Arauz, passed away earlier this September, this has been a very productive time for me, and I would like to dedicate to his memory my work and its future publication. My fellowship was awarded to create an interpretive carto-bibliography and descriptive as well, that is a catalog of the most significant maps in the cartographical history of Panama from 1503 till 1875. Is everybody hearing me well back there? Thank you. My sources were eminently the Kislak collection, the wonderful and amazing several collections at the Geography and Map Division, as well as the Rare Books Division. My research was quite extensive. I had to look at collections of loose maps, at maps on rare books, as well as atlases. The Library of Congress has an amazing collection of the most incredible atlases, and it was not just very useful, but a pleasure for me to have been able to have access to all these treasures. Let's start by showing you, obviously you all know where the Isthmus of Panama is in the Western Hemisphere. We see it as the narrowest point in the Americas. But the most important thing to know is that our isthmus does not follow the same north-south pattern of the Western Hemisphere. The Isthmus of Panama, as the line comes south, veers east. So our isthmus runs east-west, which puts the Caribbean or the Atlantic side north. West is Costa Rica, east is Colombia, and south is the Pacific Ocean. This is why when the 29th of September of 1513, the discoverer, so-called the conquistador Vasco Núñez de Balboa, reached the Sea of the South, he did it by, and you can see here the route he followed. He went west, based out of Santa Maria la Antigua del Darien, and then headed south, and that's why he called the Pacific Ocean the Sea of the South. That was the first name, a name that was to stick and appear in antique maps for the following 250 years, El Mar del Sur. You see there also, Balboa is also the name of our currency. He arrived, as you can see here, where the arrow ends, at the Gulf of San Miguel, which became the very first name given to any place, Christian name, that is Western name, given to any place in the Pacific Ocean. Because Panama is a prominent geographical feature of the world, it's a world crossroads, I could not limit myself to study the maps of my country that only show the present-day territory or places within Panama. I had to go to a broader geographical scope. So I categorize my maps as regional, both to the south that show Panama attached to the northern tip of South America, regional north, which show Panama attached to Central America, as well as the Caribbean, and even maps that show a very important depiction of Panama at the hemispheric and at the global levels. Of course, other parameters in the classification took place, such as naval charts, portoland charts, even maps that show Panama as an inset, which guides the attention of the observer to that geographical importance. Manuscript maps, extensive collection here, cataloged by Dr. John Ebert and Anthony Mullen, and I made good use of those maps as well. Now, we're talking about 1501 till 1875. That's 375 years of history, which I had to divide in 4 terms, 4 periods: discovery and conquest, colonial 1 or A, colonial B, and the time when Panama became independent from Spain in 1821 until the year where, in my opinion, the true shape of the Isthmus of Panama was finally achieved on a map. 1875, the time just before the first attempt to actually build a Panama Canal. In this amazing map, one of the treasures here at the Library of Congress, the Batista Agnese map, comes from a little small atlas handmade by this cartographer monk, one of the best ones of his time. In this map, we see a line showing Magellans Route around the world. To me, the more important depiction of this map lay on this other line, depicted in actual gold leaf, connecting Peru with Spain, going through the Isthmus of Panama. To me, immediately it became the first depiction of Panama's role as a point of transit, significant map to include in our carto-bibliography. We see also that in other very early maps, such as this one, the toponymy, that is the naming of places on the map, out of very few names, always Panama or Darien or Veragua appear. In this beautiful antique map, look how classic that looks. This is Sebastian Münster map of the Western Hemisphere. This is the first map that shows the Americas on their own. It is the first map that mentions Mare Pacificum, that names the Pacific with that name. In this map, I aimed immediately to my region of interest and saw the name Veragua. Veragua was a name given when Christopher Columbus first visited the Isthmus of Panama in his 4th and last trip to the Americas. He arrived and actually attempted to establish a colony at the northern part of what today is the beautiful province of Veragua. The name still stands, and it is the oldest Spanish indigenous name present on the Isthmus of Panama. Here we come to a very interesting looking map. This is one of the manuscript treasures at the Geography and Map Division. As you can see, this map shows south at the top. It became a common find in the early maps of Panama to show it in that type of depiction. It is my idea that the early maps of Panama, the early conquistadors, this is how they saw the Isthmus of Panama. And before 1513, they did not know there was a Pacific Ocean. And they were coming from the Caribbean islands. They're heading south. It makes a lot more sense to put the coastal features that you need for visual recognition to be able to arrive to put your destination in front of you. It also shows you south to be your goal. I've called this interpretation the conquistador's view, which is reaffirmed, although this map is a map that was made as late as the 1700s. We see in this other map, this doesn't come from a map found here in the Library of Congress, but it's very significant. This map is arguably the first map of the Pacific Ocean as a result of actual exploration, not an assumption about an ocean existing. We see, for example, south at the top, very difficult to understand this map. Here is the city of Panama, south, sorry about that. South, the coast begins to hook like this. That's a misconception. This map was made by one of the master pilots that took Pizarro and Almagro on their first trip out to the coast of Peru. Given personally to Gonzalo Fernández de Oviedo, who was a chronicler who actually lived in Panama. This map was lost for many years in manuscripts in Spain until José Amador de los Ríos, under instructions by the Academy of History of Spain, published it in the mid-1800s. It's a treasure, this map, and I think it may be the very first map of the Pacific, unless they find the long-lost map of Balboa, which may have made it with Pedro de Arbolancha, as he sent in a galleon hoping to reach Spain and to let Europe know that he had found another ocean. This beautiful map comes from it's actually, you can find it in the first atlas exclusively of the New World. Descriptiones Ptolemaicae Augmentum is one of the treasures at the Kislak collection. And here it shows the first name that Panama was referred to by the Spanish crown, Castilla de Oro, or Castilla Aurifera, a very enticing name designed to attract more Spanish to come and to settle. In this enlargement that I frame here, we see here the site of the very first European settlement in the mainland of the New World, Santa María la Antigua del Darien. This year, 2010, it's the 500th anniversary of the establishment of the first European settlement in the mainland of the New World. A tiny village in the coast of Darien, and this is where Vasco Núñez de Balboa set out on his expedition to reach the Sea of the South. A lot of firsts happen here. There's also a referral to the Puerto de Misas, the first mass given by Diego de Nicuesa on the mainland of the New World as he was sailing to his recently appointed governorship of Veragua. The map, look at this beautiful cartouche. The cartouche is the decorative box where the map title is presented. It shows the typical art and ornaments of the Flemish style of the late 16th century. Okay, now we come to a very interesting map. This map is found in Descripción de las Indias Occidentales, one of the treasures, again, of the Kislak collection. And in this map, we see very little information. Spanish map. The Spanish maps were not made for the use of everyone. They were made to be seen by official Spanish eyes. The series done by Herrera y Tordesillas, who basically puts this map to be seen through his work, Descripción de las Indias Occidentales, is the only Spanish map put out to be seen at this time, with the exception of the great map by Gutierrez and Koch, which filled another role. That map was supposed to show what Spain had in the Americas. That map has a purpose. This map doesn't tell you much. And it's interesting because, for example, the Pearl Islands are missing. So is the Tuira River. The Tuira River, which in the Darien leads you to what was then the most productive gold mines in Panama, the mines of the Holy Ghost of Cana. This is the Pearl Islands. That's the Tuira River going up into the heart of Darien, which led you to the mines of the Holy Ghost. This is a picture of a group I led not long ago after a 12-day expedition into the heart of this magnificent place. That locomotive there is the remnants of an attempt to reopen the mine by a British gold mining company in the late 1800s. It's a wonderful place to see how the forest comes back and retakes. You can see leaf-cutter ants walking on an old railroad line in the middle of the rainforest. In that locomotive, when you go into the place where the pilot of the locomotive used to be, you can see feces of jaguar in there. The forest comes back. Well, that's another part of the story. Now, if we go back here to the same map, in this one in a beautiful colored version, which appears in Michel Collihin's version of Herrera y Tordesillas' work, one of the treasures at the Geography and Map Division. I would like to read this from my work, and this is very important. In what concerns Panama, the López de Velasco, Torres y Tordesillas map, which we're seeing, is very important in defining what we call the cartographical genesis of a nation. It implies that as early as 1574, when this map was made, a map of the territory of the present-day Republic of Panama had been made. This cartographical demarcation establishes the territory of Panama to be composed by the regions of Darien, Veragua, and Panama. With the exception of some island states such as Cuba, Puerto Rico, the cartographical definition of a nation's territory on the mainland of the New World, as the case of Panama, is unprecedented. Our territory was defined as early as 1574. This is one of the most significant maps in the cartographical history of my country. Now, as I examine all these maps, I was able to notice several patterns and styles in depicting the maps of Panama. And I thought it would be great to establish these patterns to allow the map scholar or map enthusiast to be able to recognize and identify the origin of a map by merely knowing its outline. This brought me to this pattern, the most used pattern, most influential, what I call the Garretts Delight pattern, which shows the Gulf of Panama here with a very large and exaggerated point of chami. Garretts was an amazing cartographer of the early 17th century, and he publishes the map through Johannes de Laet, Nieuwe Wereld, and excuse my terrible Dutch. And this style remains from 1620 to 1740, was used by greats such as Willem Blaeu, Jodocus Hondius, Gerhard Mercator, Ogilvy, Robert Dudley, Sanson d'Abbeville, even French adopt this style. Always when you see a large peninsula coming in from the west into the Gulf of Panama, is the Garretts Delight style. Another style that did not last too long, was very abundant, was the Wafer Dampier style, totally British. The origin was on the travels of these brilliant buccaneers that explored Panama in the end of the 1600s and produced this map. That the features here are the lack of the enlarged Chame Point, as well as a narrow Azuero Peninsula. It was used by greats such as William Hack, Herman Moll, John Senex, Robert Morden, etc. This style, which I call the symmetric Gulf of Panama style, is a style that is both Anglo and French. It shows a symmetric pattern in the Gulf of Panama where you see the two side gulfs looking like ears on the outline of a head. That is the Gulf of Panama. And this pattern did not last too long, and it was used both by great French cartographers like D'Anville, Nicolas Bellan, and British like Kitchen and Thomas Jeffries, the geographer of His Majesty. A less known style and pattern comes up closer to the end of the 18th century, the Lopez pattern, which shows an enlarged peninsula, an enlarged Gulf of San Blas, which creates a narrow isthmus east of what today is Panama City. Then we come, these were a few of the many styles that I was able to define. What we see here now is a beautiful chart done by Arend Roggeveen, a Dutch chart maker, which shows what was the most desired coastline in the Spanish Main. The smallest bay is Nombre de Dios, the initial embarkation point of the treasures bound for Europe, and next to it is Porto Bello, the most famous fortress on the Spanish main coast of Panama. Here we see Porto Bello today. Porto Bello is Italian for beautiful port. It's the result of Columbus's last visit to the New World. Christopher Columbus went into the bay and seeing how beautiful the port was, named it Porto Bello. The fortresses were immediately built by Bautista Antonelli, the military engineer of Philip II, to protect the bay from buccaneers and attacks. Nombre de Dios was sacked 3 times by Francis Drake. And on his last trip into the Main, he burned Nombre de Dios in 1596, so the Spanish moved their embarkation point to Porto Bello. And it was right at that year when in hills just behind Porto Bello, the Paso de Caipirilla, Francis Drake's forces were for the first time defeated by those of Capitan Alonso de Sotomayor, known as the defender of Porto Bello, who ambushed Drake's troops as they were trying to hit the Pacific and attack the city of Panama. It was a seesaw struggle between the British and Spanish all along, and Panama was its theater. Look at this. Sweep, that's the castle of Santiago de la Gloria in Porto Bello. That's the bay. And there is where Francis Drake is buried today. Francis Drake, in 1596, fell ill as he was coasting the Caribbean coast of Panama. And before he died, he stood up from his bed, and like a Viking, he put on his best military uniform and died. He was buried with full military honors in Porto Bello, where he lies today. The British government set an underwater plaque to commemorate the site. It's all part of our history. Francis Drake has been in Panama now for over 450 years. We think of him as Panamanian. The Buccaneer era is about to arrive at its peak. Here we see this magnificent map, which was published in the first edition of Buccaneers of America, a bestseller. published in Holland initially. It shows the attack of Henry Morgan to the city of Panama. At the time, it was the largest pirate attack to any place on the Spanish Main. We see the Chagres River well defined that he followed to get to Panama City. This is one of my favorite places in Panama, what remains of the old majestic castle of San Lorenzo el Real de Chagre, the guardian to the entrance to the Pacific in Panama. It's a wonderful place. If you sit there on a rock by yourself, all you hear is the Caribbean surf hitting the walls of the castle, the howler monkeys roaring in the rainforest in the back. It's a great place to tell pirate stories on a moonlit night. San Lorenzo. In San Lorenzo, Morgan arrived first. He didn't attack. He stayed on a boat. He sent his second in command, Captain Broadley, to take the fort. Like ants, the pirates crawled over to attack the fort. There they met a very valiant Castilian captain by the name of Pedro de Elizalde y Ursua, who gave his life and 100 of his men and made the pirates pay dearly for their taking of San Lorenzo. Over 150 pirates died in the taking of San Lorenzo, and even Captain Broadley had his legs blown off by a well-placed cannon shot, by Capitan de Elizalde dying days later. Many pirates died ahead in the days that followed, but Morgan had many pirates waiting. Then he went up the Chagres River and through the Las Cruces Trail, aiming for his target, which we see here in this beautiful map by Antonelli of the city of Panama, the first city in the Pacific Ocean, founded in 1519, which he attacked. And here we see an engraving also found in Exquemelin's book in the Kislak collection that shows the city of Panama burning. And Morgan's attack, this took place in January 1671. The city was taken, razed to the ground, and today this is a wonderful site to visit when you go to Panama. It's a World Heritage Site. What you see is the ruins of old Panama, Panama Viejo, and the tower of the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Ascension of Panama. Not long after that, one morning in the north coast of Darien, what I considered la creme of the buccaneers of the Caribbean showed up on the coast. Among them was Captain Bartholomew Sharp, Richard Sawkins, John Coxon, some of the most famous buccaneers. They immediately show banners and lead their men, led by Kuna Indians, who were always against the Spaniards. And it's funny because the Kunas, they know how to count those large numbers of pirates coming through. So a Kuna Indian started throwing kernels of corn into a bowl and showed it to his chief. This is how many pirates are coming into our terrain. And came across the isthmus. And then we saw here, this is a beautiful Italian version of Henry Popple's map, one of the sections of Popple's map showing the Isthmus of Darien. And here we see their route followed by the buccaneers coming in to attack the city of Panama. When they arrived to attack the city of Panama, this is the second city. Remember, the first city had been destroyed. When they saw the walls of the city, it was too strong to fight it. So they instead, Sharp attacks and takes a Spanish ship, a galleon that was on the bay. He called it the Trinity. In this ship, Sharp, the pirates divide. Sharp goes and attacks all the Spanish towns along the coast of South America. He there overtakes a Spanish galleon, El Rosario, that had a very important set of charts and sailing directions that were considered top secret. This was the famous derrotero. It was so valued that when Sharp eventually made with the Trinity, went over Cape Horn into England, the first time English sailors had ever gone in that direction using the Cape Horn, the Spanish ambassador to England immediately demanded the imprisonment and execution of Sharp. Sharp presented his derrotero to King Charles II, which immediately, seeing the value of such a piece, pardoned Sharp. This derrotero, under instructions of the king, was copied by hand by William Hack, and it is today this is a scene showing the capture of the Rosario. And here at the Library of Congress, you have a facsimile copy of this derrotero, which are the English versions of those Spanish charts, which were made in Panama in 1669. They were made to be used with sailing directions, top secret documents for the time. Now, not all the buccaneers that came to Panama were cutthroats bound on destruction. Among them were brilliant men like William Dampier or Lionel Wafer, who William Preston calls the pirate of exquisite mind. I can see William lagging behind as the front men are slashing with cutlasses, and William is collecting plants, watching birds, keeping records on his diary, which he kept throughout his travels on the world on a bamboo tube. With these documents, he produced A New Voyage Around the World, a bestseller that told about his travels around the planet. This map appeared in that work, and it is one of the treasures at the Kislak collection. Now, Dampier did not join Sharp on his trip. He stayed behind. But then to get back to the Caribbean, he crossed the Darien back to the Caribbean. With him was Lionel Wafer, which we don't have an image of him. We don't know how he looked like. But he had to stay behind because he was wounded. And during the time he stayed behind, he lived with the Kuna Indians for many months. He was as observant as Dampier and kept records. When he got back, he wrote and produced A New Voyage and Description of the Isthmus of America, one of the most fascinating tools to learn about the early ethnology of the Kuna people. This same work was used to entice, here we see a Kuna Indian woman. These are the people that Wafer lived with. It is one of the most beautiful regions of my country. The Kuna Indians are probably the strongest indigenous culture left in the New World in terms of their own autonomy. They live out in the coast in 365 islands of coral on the Caribbean side of Panama. This is the world where the pirates arrived. Many characters in history went through these islands, and today you can visit them when you travel to Panama. It's a beautiful area. As a result of Wafer's work, that work entices another group of commerce into Panama, which caused a disgrace to themselves. If you read a book in Scottish history, there is a chapter that it's called the Darien Disaster. They were lured by the possibility of creating a colony, and they established a colony right here in what was called New Caledonia. Caledonia was the old Roman name used to define the Scots. They established the town of New Edinburgh of Darien and even built the fort of St. Andrew. In 1 year, the Spaniards and malaria took care of them, and they had to withdraw. But it created a surge in maps that we see, for example, in this beautiful map by Thornton, copied by Mountain Page, or this one, the real one, because this map was actually made by one of the survivors of the colony and was copied by Herman Moll, published in his Atlas Minor of 1729. It shows another finding that I've made is that a lot of these maps put the Fort of St. Andrew in the wrong place. This shows it in the right place, just inside of the point at the Gulf of Caledonia, right here. The seesaw struggle continues. In the 18th century, in the middle of the 18th century, a very funny event takes place called the War of Jenkins' Ear. An excuse to start another war and to try to get more territory out of the declining Spanish Empire. Here we see in this beautiful map, one of the treasures of the Geography and Map Division, Philip Durell's rendering of James Renton's first vision of the attack by Admiral Vernon, Old Grog was his name, to the castle of San Felipe de Todo Fierro, the Iron Castle. He took Porto Bello in 1739, the first war of Jenkins' Ear. There were medals published. Porto Bello Road in London is named to honor this. Britannia Rules the Wave was sung for the first time in England to honor Vernon's victory. The second time Old Grog came to the Spanish Main to attack, with him probably was George Washington's older brother, Lawrence, who participated in his attack of San Lorenzo and of Cartagena. And that's why Mount Vernon has that name, because of the participation of Lawrence Washington, and he saw the military ability of Old Grog, and he named his house Mount Vernon. Now, Old Grog, when he tried to take the walls of Cartagena, he found there a spicy, very feisty Spaniard known as Half Man. He had one arm, one leg, and one eye. His name was Don Blas de Leso, and he led a charge that defeated Old Grog, Admiral Vernon, in his determined attack to take Cartagena. He failed. He had to pull back to Jamaica. So that was the part of the seesaw struggle. Blas de Leso. There is a statue in Cartagena, and people joking when they pass the statue, they say, because of you, we don't speak English. Okay, now we're moving into the 19th century. As a result, Panama is already independent from Colombia. Panama joins, independent from Spain. Panama joins voluntarily La Gran Colombia, the nation formed by the South American liberator Simón Bolívar. Simón Bolívar, not known by many, is one of the precursors of the Panama Canal. He hired the services of England's finest surveyor, John Augustus Lloyd. And in 1828, Lloyd, with a team of surveyors, traveled the Isthmus of Panama twice and produced this amazing map, the very first map that defines a route for the Panama Canal. It's one of the treasures of the Panama Canal collection found in the Geography and Map Division. He came to the point, Lloyd, with tomahawks, he would hammer trees so that he could climb in these enormous ceibas and anacardiums in the forest of Panama to be able to see through the forest and draw his map. Now, another event is about to happen. Sutter's Mill, California, 1848. Gold is found in California. Oh my God. 350,000 people from the east coast of the U.S. decide to go there in the next 4 years. Approximately 120,000 of them go through Panama. This beautiful map by John Tallis, which is characterized by these beautiful ornamental depictions of the site of the decoration. Here you can see the castle of San Lorenzo, and imaginary conception of what is the castle of San Lorenzo at the entrance of the Chagres River. They arrived there, and I can only imagine the poor people that live under the castle when they saw hundreds of 49ers with their Colt revolvers and Bowie knives. They must have thought Morgan was coming back. And they were bound on getting across the isthmus to catch a San Francisco-bound clipper and go to California. The next 4 years, Panama becomes again a major point of transit. Here we see, this is a map of the second city of Panama, Casco Viejo, which I consider this map found at the Panama Canal Collection Geography and Map Division to be the first tourist map of Panama. This map was produced by a doctor who lived in Casco Viejo, an American doctor. And he said, look at all these people coming. I'm going to sell maps and tell them what to do when they're here. And the map has, amazing references. For example, it's all itemized under there. There is Z. Jones Boots and Clothing. There is the Miners Restaurant. There is Dr. Kratowicz American Drugstore. There is an American hospital with Dr. Williams and Dr. Jenkins. And I think the one that probably got them more business as they waited for the San Francisco Clippers was the Corporal Wines and Liquors, right in the middle of the old city. This is Panama's Casco Viejo today. It's a World Heritage Site. It's a beautiful place to visit. Its narrow streets are reminiscence of New Orleans. Beautiful iron balconies, brick streets, lots of boutiques and cafes and restaurants. It's a wonderful place to visit. This was the second city of Panama. From this city, modern Panama grew. And I don't want to show you a picture of modern Panama because you don't want to go there then. It looks like Manhattan. In this last picture here, we see the Casco Viejo in the foreground, and in the back, the Pacific entrance to the Panama Canal. There's the causeway, and there is a ship heading from the Pacific into the Panama Canal. Now, the 49er era precipitated the building of the Railroad of Panama. This was the first transcontinental railroad to go from one ocean to the other in the Americas. In this wonderful map by Thomas Harrison, found at the Geography and Map Division's Panama Canal collection, we see the route of the railroad. Many people use that railroad. And I like to show you the impressions of a very distinguished visitor that used that railroad as he went across. He had his way with words. What an honor for us in Panama to have had such a marvelous naturalist say these words about our ecosystem. Today, you can travel the Railroad of Panama and be exposed to this same beauty. What you're looking at there is a little tiny bit of the Panama Canal watershed, a vast expanse of over 500,000 hectares of pristine rainforest that provides the water for the functioning of the Panama Canal, the most protected rainforest in Panama. Every time a ship goes through the Panama Canal, it uses 52 million gallons of water. There's 40 ships a day, every day of the year. 40 times 52 million times 365. That is the amount of water that comes out and is stored in this 500,000 hectares of rainforest. Panama's most important natural resource is its watershed. There are maps that take you to places and take you out. Some other maps take you to your death. This map is the result of an irresponsible project among the many fantastic concepts of creating a canal through the Isthmus of Darien. This doctor by the name of Cullen one time wrote a book saying that he had found a pass through the Darien at 150 feet of elevation, and he walked from one ocean to the other. He said he climbed a tree and he could see the two oceans from that tree. Everybody in Europe said, my God, we have the place for the canal. Lionel Gisborne, the more serious of this old scheme, goes in there and draws this map. But he didn't go in there really and check what the Darien was all about. He just did a little probe on the Atlantic side, crossed the isthmus through the railroad, and did another probe on the Pacific side, and then he wrote whatever he wanted in the middle. It was a disgrace for U.S. Navy Lieutenant Isaac Strain, who in 1854 led 27 men, approximately, to survey this area. They got lost in the jungle. They only went in with 10 days of provisions. No guides. They start going in circles. They don't know what to eat. By a miracle, Isaac Strain, after almost 20 plus days, stumbles in a village and is able to gather help to go and rescue the other members of his expedition. Several of them were dead. And then they came out. On the other side, Commander Prevost, a British surveyor, had attempted the same thing from the Pacific side, and he went in only to have 4 of his men killed by Kuna Indians as he left them guarding one of his campsites. They didn't know where they were going. So this map, which is found in the Panama Canal collection, has that dubious origin. Look at this, another fantastic concept, utopian. This Frenchman, Athanase Arauz, wanted to build a city in the middle of Darien with avenues after each country in Europe where all the commerce could go through. These people had never been in a tropical forest. It is until 1871 that the very first truly organized and well-equipped expedition led by U.S. Navy Commander Thomas Oliver Selfridge arrives and produces this, which I consider the best map of Darien to its time. This man, and look, this is another first. This is the first photograph probably taken anywhere in the American tropics. It was taken by none other than Timothy O'Sullivan, the famous Civil War photographer, responsible for some of the most dramatic pictures of that war. He accompanied Selfridge into this expedition. And this expedition shows Selfridge right here with his big hat and his gun, leading all the Marines into the Darien forest. They were so well equipped, listen to this, they brought a telegraph cable connecting the USS Nipsic, anchored in the Darien, way into the Darien jungles. This is the same parallel as if today I take you in there with a satellite phone. He was able to relay information instantly. This is how well equipped he was. When he entered the Darien from the coast, he faced immediately these mountains. There is no 150-foot pass here. Where was Cullen smoking here in the Darien? There's no possible. But he had a mission to fulfill. He had to go in there and actually determine. So he enters. He goes beyond the jungle. And I say jungle, and this is probably what he saw. One of the few things he may have seen. We have a beautiful golden-colored mannequin, a typical inhabitant of the understory of jungle, and our endemic primate, the red-naped or Geoffrey's tamarin. When I say jungle, I remind you that jungle is not the same thing as forest, rainforest. Jungle is rainforest in regeneration. When you cut rainforest, What comes up is jungle. And it takes 120 years of jungle to become forest again. There are several characteristics in terms of kinds of plants and kinds of animal that may live in jungle as compared to rainforest. As he pushed deeper and deeper into the Darien, he drew this map, for example, where the watersheds of the Cacarica River meet the watershed of the Tuira River. And here, this is a place so wild that I read one of my father's diaries. He encountered a troop of natives in a lost village in Cacarica who drank the contents of spider monkeys, of the stomach of spider monkeys. That's how primitive these people were. You know that story, compadre? As he went deeper into the jungle, and he puts it in his memoirs, he saw a jaguar, our most amazing predator, the largest tropical predator. This picture comes from the experiments that we support in our field station in the Darien. You see there a motion-sensitive camera. When the jaguar walks by, and my good friend Ricardo Moreno, he's the scientist who leads this experiment, he sets a pole with a rag soaked with Calvin Klein's Obsession. I'm not kidding. We have pictures of foxes, of pumas, of jaguars, of tapirs coming in to sniff Calvin Klein's Obsession. And that's how he's been able to take these amazing photos. I mean, this is a jaguar in the wild walking through the forest of the Darien. When we showed this picture to one of our workmen out in the Darien, he called this jaguar a puerquero, which means he feeds on peccaries. You can tell because of his size. This animal is very close to 300 pounds. He may have also seen this amazing sight. Panama's national bird, the most powerful eagle in the world, the harpy, which nests on the emergent quipo trees of the Darien. I took these pictures in one of my expeditions, taking bird watchers to see the nest of this amazing creature. Look at this. Commander Selfridge had another expedition after that, and that was his reaction. Such is the Darien. I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open for any questions. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.